Well, good evening, ladies and gentlemen. As one might say, if you want to use that term, back from the wars. There was really no war, but it's an old expression. In any event, we have just returned from the 150th anniversary of the Theosophical Society, the World Congress. It's about 3 or 4 different meetings, the names of which I don't remember, but it's certainly the 150 years I do remember, which was held at the campus of the University of Brian Campbell. Because I'm supposed to remember BC, so it is the University of British Columbia. Not a Brian Campbell, maybe we'll give his name to it later. In any event, first of all, let me say that our international president who chose the location, Tim Boyd, who is an old friend of mine from long ago, and I may go into that a little or not. But anyway, he, I think, selected a signally marvelous place. It is particularly, I'm told, at this time of the year, but since we were there this time of the year, so what else do you want? You know, in any event, it is close to the ocean, on the outskirts of Vancouver, and a heck of a lot nicer than the town of Vancouver. If you have a choice sometimes, then go to the university right away and forget Vancouver. In any event, it is a singularly beautiful place. Fabulous architecture, beautiful botanical fixtures everywhere, wonderful garden, and big. The university buildings are in the height of skyscrapers, really big, but absolutely beautiful, symmetrically designed. I'm a big admirer of architecture, and I must say that this is the first time in my life that I saw what would be considered to be really modern architecture to be wonderful, absolutely wonderful. So if you ever want to see a beautiful countryside and beautiful buildings, then you should go there. What we saw of the student body, I would say probably better than half of the student body seemed to be Asian. So we have people there from Japan, from Korea, from all kinds of places, all very nice, well-behaved people. No people running around demonstrating and carrying around Palestinian flags or anything like that, but behaving themselves nicely, and all kinds of facilities where one can eat or drink. Let me tell you, it's the 7th wonder of the world. I said so in public. It's really a great place. Now, of course, this is the middle of summer, so we were told by possibly some people who are in the know that when it gets to be winter, and so it's a different situation, that being quite far north, being very, very close to the ocean, that the climate is probably not terribly to our liking. It's not a Southern California climate, but right now I would say it was just wonderful. We had according to the statistics, we had around how many hundred?
375.
Yeah, so just short of 400 members of the Theosophical Society. They're from all over the world, including the international and national officers and various people from New Zealand and Australia, and so really very nice people, and a number of I think very worthwhile programs, until of course the most worthwhile of all programs came along, which was mine. So I'll kind of quit there and tell you what my approach to the situation was and some of the responses to it. We had of course prearranged that mine would be the last lecture before closing the conference, and that I would have a pendant, as we call it in French, an interrogator who is also a very good friend of ours from New York City, our champion theosophical historian, Michael Gomes, who arranged years ago my trip to my home city, to Budapest, which was a deed that shall never be forgotten in the annals of Hungary or in the annals of the society. In any event, so we were up on the stage, and he was asking me various questions to get the situation going. Now, not to keep you on the edge of your seats. It's not really too many sitting on the edge of their seats. And I'll tell you that what my basic approach was, that I already planned out here, and I think it's an important one, and the crowd assembled there seemed to think likewise, and that is this: that after all this time, it behooves the members of this great society, which is now that many years old, to perhaps take stock and gain some vision into its activities, and what after this long period of time it is still capable of doing. And so in order to bring that issue to the fore, also in concert with my interrogator, Mr. Michael Gomes, whom we have desired fervently for a number of years now to bring out here to us from New York, and I think that this renewal of connections might be conducive to that. Anyway, all of us are of the view that the time has come, after this great period of time, when this curious heterodox organization, which is spread all over the world, and which has, according to our contact there, really very insightful, very polite, and very wonderful members all over the world, a good many of them of which came to this meeting. And therefore it seemed the appropriate time to at least voice in some manner the thesis, as I have called it, but not publicly, namely the principal message, which I, at least, or as one of the members with the longest membership in almost 400 people, and of the most advanced age, so to say, the Methuselah, the age had won the old-timer of the group was putting forth. And obviously when one does that, every time these matters are mentioned, they are put forth in a slightly different time, but you can get the exact manner in which it was put forth, because I believe that everything was recorded, and that the recordings, at least of my speech and my dialogue with Michael Gomes, is available. What I don't know what these pseudo radio stations are now. You know, I listen to the old-time radio. That's it. In any event, so I'm not really sure how that was mentioned, but let us say I was assured that what kind of a rinky-dink station did they broadcast? YouTube. Well, I don't have a tube, so it wasn't my tube, you see. But in any event, apparently whatever YouTube is, and I think it's probably rebroadcast there several times, and as long as the original dialogue is there, it should be quite useful, because the people employed in the recording and in the dialogue and so forth were all very good and very respectable people. No. And that being the case, I recollected some dialogues and trialogues that occurred, believe it or not, in this very room, who I would say in the early 1970s, right after my arrival here. And among these, there occurred a portentous conversation, which I remember having carried on with a very knowledgeable and very nice English gentleman who was a member of the lodge. We had about over 100 people, members, actual meeting coming members of the society here at that time, and so that was a British gentleman who resided in Long Beach. He was a nautical engineer, Mr. Will Ross, who was working for the U.S. Navy there, a very fine man. And so at one time here, right about that, you know how you remember for way back in the past, I remember the portions of the room where we were talking, which was sort of back that way going toward the kitchen. And the idea that he brought out, and these were his words, that one of the difficulties, one of the failures of the society at that time seemed to be that because we had radio broadcasts once a week at that time too, that came from Besant Lodge, and he said that what we should have emphasized both in the radio programs and elsewhere. Then we had a public lecture every Sunday afternoon. Even the Sunday when we discovered that there was a dead dog underneath the building was the very first Sunday that we had a program here. And our that time large president, Dr. William Abt, a great guy, he was my mentor in public speaking and also in bringing to my attention that one needs to do something about dead dogs underneath the building. Anyway, very great guy. And so these people all were listening to Mr. Ross and they carrying on this conversation. And our conversation by his statement was that what we needed to do here locally with our lodge and so, that we needed to begin to concentrate more on what he called the mysticism of Theosophy, and that we were too much stuck in the technicalities of Theosophical teachings going back into the 19th century, and that that kind of an approach would be very appropriate. So I kept that in mind because he was a member of long-standing. I think he said that if he had remained in England long enough as a young man, he could have claimed that he was in England at the same time as H.P. Blavatsky. But of course that had long passed already by then. So and I said, all right, I need to investigate this. What is this gentleman talking about? And the investigation took, let's say, decades and decades. And I would say that by now my investigations had at least redounded to my satisfaction, and I can use them as a basis of conversation and of making suggestions about further programs of the society. So what we are dealing with here is, first of all, and that was the case then, all of us who were members here and so, and we had a set, because there are several sets depending on the edition, of Blavatsky's Secret Doctrine, and various less portentous works that were available, which all really, when they are analyzed from a academic or semi-academic point of view, boiled down to the fact that they were a very elaborate, mythically constructed, and at the same time tremendously fascinating cosmology. Cosmology regarding the origins and the workings of the, what else, the cosmos, and also the roles that individuals may and should play in that context, and many more. So I concluded after a number of years of cogitating over the matter. Incidentally, the word cogitate I have learned from Geoffrey Hodgson. So you be reverent of the word. Mr. Hodgson was sitting in our office there now, when he gave his first lecture here, and I came in like a whirlwind through the front door. This was on a Sunday, because Sunday afternoons we had our lectures. And so I went in, and there he was sitting at the desk, so I withdrew and said, "Oh, I'm very sorry to disturb you, Mr. Hodgson." And he looked at me, he said, "Oh no, come on in, I was just cogitating." So that's where I learned the word cogitate, and now you can learn it here. So in any event, there were other interesting, I might as well, as they call it nowadays, whenever you tell something to people, you share, you know, really. But let's say, sharing with you the fact that Mr. Hodgson did, as there were the two of us just in the office, nobody else here yet, he shared with me some insight that he had about my own self and my own condition that turned out to be, I think, very well understood and well analyzed by him. The very first thing was that, you see, your life has not come to an end as you thought a while ago. It's just beginning. You have a great future, and it's going to be very important, and you stick with what you have started, and it will redound to yours and many others' benefits. So I thanked him very much, and a few other things, which was really true, because upon coming to this country and ending in the California, Siberia, which is the San Joaquin Valley, I was in utter despair, as I think most people would when they end up there. In any event, I thought, well, really, I think I made a great big mistake, the first really big mistake of my life, and maybe this just means that I'm not supposed to be here on this earth at all. But Mr. Hodgson rectified that. He said, you did exactly as well you're supposed to, and you go on with what you have started, and it will be very important. And a number of other things he disclosed to me. He was really a genuine seer, and at the same time also, let's say, very adroit, very insightful teacher. And you could tell, for instance, I mean, these are just my personal impressions, you could tell when he was speaking about something that was really a matter of great personal experience to him. I remember, I heard him already speak, wonderful orator. I mean, he was the Cicero of Theosophy. Cicero was the greatest orator of the Roman Empire. But in any event, so I heard him several times, and then he gave a lecture in Pasadena, of all places, which was on Kundalini. Theosophists don't usually speak too much about it because, it has kind of associations with tantric sexuality and then this, that, and the other thing, that they kind of shy away from it. Even though, and I might as well do something funny if anybody considers it funny, my friend Robert Bills and I at the Theosophical National Convention in Lake Geneva, Wisconsin, designed a song about Kundalini, and goes like this: Kundalini, Kundalini, tiny thing, Kundalini dance, Kundalini sing, Kundalini, Kundalini, though you're very small, when you rush up my spine, you're 10 feet tall, boom. So this is at least in half my composition, as well as my performance. And so you can take it, but it really has very little relationship to anything else. But nevertheless, let's see why I brought that up, because I could see as Hodgson was speaking about Kundalini, eyes lit up, and he said, you see, then this happens, and then that happens, and then this chakra, and that chakra, and all of a sudden he came very much more to life as he was before. Then it hit me, well, because he has experienced this. He knows what this is. So it was so much more alive. Of course, I never said anything about it. But the fact of the matter is that he was a man who practiced what he preached, and when he was preaching what he practiced, then he really came to life. But I still saw him lecturing when he was in his 90s, was here from New Zealand in Crotona, wherein he could almost see, he could almost hear, but he was up there sitting in a chair, pouring forth the most magnificent English, grammatical and other language. I mean, totally wonderful lecturing with a totally great knowledge of the language. When I went to New Zealand myself a little later, he was already, I think, 94 or something like that, and he couldn't be seen, as I often debate as to whether I should see people at this particular time, except you here. See, I say, in any event, a great man and a very interesting man. So that, let's say, like all outstanding people, Mr. Hodgson had his enemies, but I would say that his enemies, for the most part, were wrong, because what he was talking about, he knew, and he was, I would say, he was both a clairvoyant and a mystic. So there is already something of the mysticism of Theosophy. Now, in any event, that was sort of the beginning. And then it went from there, and I met a number of very fine, very interesting people over the years, and from my contacts with them, I sort of deduced that there were, at that particular time, we are going back now to the 1970s and 1980s, there were kinds of two theosophists. Number one, the believers and the repeaters. In other words, the people who believed implicitly the secret doctrine, all kinds of other things, and who felt that their calling was to repeat what they had learned. And when you are subjected to that kind of conversation for a long time, it wears on you. And it did wear on me, and I thought to myself, can't you think of something else? But I didn't tell them that, because to be polite is another important issue. But let us say I came to the conviction that there were other steps here that the majority of our members were not taking. That they got to a particular step. Madame Blavatsky has them as the 7 bodies. They're the this and that, and astral body and mental body and intuitive body and physical body, and sort of at least about 7 of them. Those were the steps that people were taking. But there was no indication, shall we say, from all of these really fine people, fine and nice people. I can say, I think, without, and I didn't say this in Vancouver, I can say with the utmost veracity that if it hadn't been for Besant Lodge and its wonderful members at that time, I wouldn't have survived. because I was still suffering from various symptoms of my earlier life. My country, my beloved country from which I had to escape, various other things, being pursued by the communist secret province, even outside of Hungary in Austria, because for instance, we had no telephone, of course. You had to go to the post office to make a phone call. So as I got a phone call from the, at that time it was called not the CIA, but that's a C something. In any event, office in one of the little towns up the road in the Alps, that if convenient I should come and see them. So sure enough, I got on the lovely little train going through the mountains and the lakes and all of it. It's really a heck of a nice part of the world. If you are planning to take a vacation, you're trying to travel to Austria, and particularly the Alpine provinces, Upper Austria, Tyrol. It's the most magnificent countryside that you ever want to see. It really is. So I got to where I was going, got out, and I knew where the address, because I was familiar with that town. I knew the address that the American gentleman indicated where their office was, and so from the railroad I marched there, and was a very nice man, and his secretary, as I never forgot after all, I was only about 16 and a half years old. She was an absolutely most beautiful woman. And on top of it all, she was a relative of mine, which I didn't know. In any event, they were all very nice to me. And so he said, look, Mr. Hoeller, we got news that they are looking for you. I said, by they, you mean the people over in Hungary? Yes. He says, and thank you very much for telling me what I am to do. So I wrote this up in a little paragraph in one of my books. So if you find it there, then you can turn to the next page. In any event, said, there are people every week. This was in the American occupational zone of Austria. Every week there are people who disappear. And we wouldn't like you to be one of them. Well, I said, thank you so much for your good intentions. So what am I to do? He said, well, there isn't really all that much to do. But especially when you are in one of the cities, like Salzburg or Innsbruck or so forth, look around. If you go down another street and somebody whom you just saw is still there looking for you, then it's a sign that they are looking for you. And then also have somebody, one or two people with you much of the time, because the presence of witnesses does discourage. But he says they are going to come and kidnap you and take you back to Hungary. And I said, well, thank you very much for telling me. And there was his card with his phone number. He says, if there's anything that you notice of a suspicious nature, you call me on the phone. And actually, there were very few suspicious things that occurred thereafter. And I did stay in touch with him, but I said, that's the kind of life that we were living. And there were people of our acquaintances and relatives and so who had also exited the Red Inferno, who just disappeared. I've never seen again. In any event, this was a kind of tenuous lifestyle that we were living there in exile. And then, as it turned out to be, good fortune allowed me to come to America, and this was in spite of my horror of the San Joaquin Valley, which if you go there, I think you will share. I mean, there are places that are just right here in America that are just frightening, and that is one of them. You know. Fruit trees and grape stakes, very large number of rattlesnakes, and one little Theosophical lodge in Ridley, California, which is where I was residing. And there I met some very, very nice people. That was also the first place where I heard of Manly Palmer Hall, because we had an elderly lady, Mrs. Helen Lagerson, God bless her soul wherever she is, who had a lot of books of Manly Hall. And so she was a large member. So she took me to her house and showed me these books, and beautiful, big, wonderfully printed and wonderfully bound books of Manly Palmer Hall. She said, yes, he's a great esoteric teacher. What he teaches is very much like Theosophy in Los Angeles. So whenever you have an opportunity, you should go and see him. I said, sure enough, I will. And so then when almost a year later I came with a local friend, we drove from Ridley, California to Los Angeles. We went to the Philosophical Research Society. And to my great chagrin, Mr. Manly Hall at that time was out of town. But his friend, Mr. Gilbert Olson, God bless his soul, welcomed us most wonderfully. And he said, no, if you come just next week, he'll be here. And he says, he'll really be sorry to miss you. We told him we were members of the Theosophical Society. So then, sure enough, about a week later I was admitted to seeing him, and it became the beginning, as the saying has it, of a beautiful friendship, because in about a month's time, I had a phone call from his vice president, late and lamented Dr. Henry Drake, and he said, would you mind coming up here? We would like to talk to you. So I went to the Philosophical Research, and he said, you know, we understand that around town, various places, Theosophical lodges and others, you know, you do quite a bit of lecturing. Would you want to do some of that for us? Well, I said, if you would have me, I sure would. So had a little more discussion, and then I was admitted to the Sanctum Sanctorum, Mr. Manly Hall's office, with the great, big, beautiful desk and other things in the library building. And the first thing he asked me, he says, what is your sun sign and your rising sign? So I didn't say anything. I reached into my pocket, where I had all my astrological data in miniature, little reduced cards. And I pulled it out and gave it to Mr. Hall. Mr. Hall looked at it, he looked for a while, and he gave them back to me. He said, we are going to get along just fine. We are going to get along just fine. And so then, fairly soon thereafter, they allocated to me a weekday evening, lecture evening, which was mostly held in the smaller auditorium, which is a sort of semi-above the library and the Philosophical Research Society. You have to go up the stairs, but in those days stairs did not make me fall down like they do now. And so my career at Philosophical Research Society began, and it ended 50 years later. And many times I lectured on Sunday morning when Mr. Hall was not present, because usually he and Mrs. Hall went on about 2 to 3 week vacation every summer, and they almost always went to Japan. So in any event, in those days I even spoke on Sunday morning, and we had that pretty big auditorium filled with people. It was really quite interesting. So I became a lecturer and a sort of, sidekick, smaller, younger, inexperienced sidekick of Manly Palmer Hall, and they really came to respect and love that man tremendously. He was, first of all, he was in all things except name a Theosophical teacher. I heard later on, from data of his life, that he, sometime in the early 1920s, I think, Dr. Besant was here in Los Angeles. We didn't have this building yet, but we had a number of buildings that are sort of across the street on the other edge of the building, and that was the original Crotona. So if you look at our frame documents over there, you will see where it says that Besant Lodge of Crotona, Hollywood. That's how this was founded, and we kept, of course, the paper. So if sometime I've been promising this for years, so maybe a gentleman should keep his promises. That's what my father's instructions. So I think I should do that. Because I have literature on it, and I also have enough of memory that I could show you the various buildings on the old Crotona as to which was served which purpose. This is the house where Annie Besant always stayed when she was here. This is the street that was named after the, first of all, one of the streets is named after the Sanskrit name of Annie Besant, which is Vasanta. It is Vasanta Way. Another one is named after Krishnamurti, whose magical name, shall we say, in the literature was, let's see, what was Krishnaji's name? Somebody better know. Anyway, in any event, that is where Krishnamurti used to stay. Various places where the different outstanding people stayed. Beautiful houses and a really nice area up there. It's sort of, but you go up Argyle, and that's where it ends. Very, very, very beautiful settlement. And as you will, quite a bit has been written about Old Crotona too. So you will find that the researchers were of the view that when World War I came and then the Great Depression, that they simply extended themselves financially a little bit too much. And so they had to sell that magnificent property that I made millions and millions at that time. And then, while nosing around in the countryside, Annie Besant and one or two of her assistants got into an airplane in about Ventura. and they flew over the countryside. And she pointed down to the ground where a certain town named Hoeller is located. And she said, "That's it." So they landed. Within a matter of days, the society purchased the entire Hoeller property, and that became the new Cortona. And it's a heck of a nice place. And I can recommend it anyone to take a look at it, because it is really a nice place in many different respects. Many very outstanding, lovely people whom I knew lived there and or came there from various places, and it's really a sentimental journey for me to go there. But that is what the Cortona in Hollywood was transplanted to. This building, however, was a silent movie house, a silent neighborhood movie house since the late 1920s, which gives me a certain feeling for it right away, because that would include 1931, which is the year of my birth, but it is also the year when my favorite early movie, Dracula, was shown, and was probably shown in this place. So we were not without our vampirical influence even that early. You know. And you can still see the two projection, the openings of the projection booths. And then I guess it was no longer feasible to keep a neighborhood theater, and then but by the time I came here with the Theosophists, and when we wanted to buy it, they said, "Go ahead," and we did, and I think was the best thing that we ever did, and I pride myself that I was one of the propagandists. The initial one was an old gentleman, a very interesting man, who had been all kinds of things in the movie industry. He was John Barrymore's business manager for something like 10 years. His name was Henry Hoeller. And his last residence was a lovely little house right down on the what is the very next street from Glen Green or something like that. That's where he lived. And being so close to his building, he says, "There is a beautiful building there. Let's see if we could buy it." So he arranged, we got a loan subscription from the Theosophical Society in Wheaton, so we bought it, and within a matter of days, dead dog or not, we were holding forth here. The first person who gave a lecture here was Manly Palmer Hoeller, who became I was getting closer to him by then, and he was also he was a big friend of Dr. Abt, our president. So he said, "Oh yes," for the first lecture. He spoke about the secret doctrine. I remember when he came out that little rinky-dink door from the garden onto the stage, because our speakers were all up on the stage at that time, and Dr. Abt was introducing him, and he spoke about the secret doctrine. It was as if he had written it. It was just really, really marvelous. That man was a living marvel all the time. In any event, so then we went ahead and did our work here, and after a few years I was also first invited to Wheaton, Illinois, to the Theosophical headquarters, and then primarily at the behest of a very interesting lady who is, most of these people are no longer with us. And you know why? Because I am still with you. In any event, the lady by the name of Joy Mills, who had occupied various offices in the Theosophical Society, she then as the years went on, she said, well, Stephan, you know, you're a pretty good lecturer. How would you like to lecture in Australia? Well, I said, if you send me, I'll go. And they sent me, and I was there for about 2 weeks. Maybe about a year later, the same kind of arrangement with New Zealand. And right now in Vancouver, I met a lovely couple who live in the capital city of New Zealand, which I think is Wellington. So they live in Wellington, and they knew still pretty much all the people whom I knew there at that time, which was really quite lovely and quite interesting. And then, of course, also prior to that, also the whole of Australia, which was, I mean, these were places where, particularly in the later period of the society, all the notables, Annie Besant, Bishop Leadbeater, and certainly Geoffrey Hodgson, a lot of people lived there. So it was a heck of a lot nicer life in New Zealand or in Australia than in Adyar in India. So if you are being tempted to go there, go ahead and do it, but remember what I said. Of course, it's a lot better now because our good friend and my good friend Tim Boyd, who has been the international president now for a number of years, he saw to it that the campus, as you might call it, of Adyar, the international headquarters, has been greatly restored, and believe it or not, even some air conditioners have been installed, to the great horror of some of the Hindus. Oh, no, we don't want that here, and we don't want any machines here. Well, they got them now. But in any event, you know, if you can make life even a little bit more comfortable than it otherwise would be, as a general rule, do it. You know, if you are a monastic, which I was on the way of becoming back home in Hungary when I was 16 years old, then maybe you want to play a little ascetic. I tell you what, it's not for me to play. I like to have a decent diet, non-vegetarian, if at all possible, and just, you know, generally a nice environment. And I don't see that that is in any way remiss or sinful or anything of that sort, because we have been placed into this locale, we have opportunities to be with nice people, to have nice festivals like this one that we just came back from. I mean, this is one of the great events of my life, and probably of the end of my life, because it was so wonderful, the environments and what was in the environment. So I'm really so glad that I went. Of course, I was asked by the international president by telephone from India, which is not a circumstance that I'm about to conceal. And so forth, but it was really wonderful. And if you get to Vancouver, and apparently primarily when the weather is clement, because the campus of the university is very, very close to the ocean. The seagulls are flying around all the time, and all that sort of thing. And I like seagulls, unless they become too unpleasant. I know that a seagull came and took my fish sandwich off my plate and flew off with it on Catalina Island. And all I could say is how daring these birds are. Or maybe even that some places in Catalina Island are for the birds. But in any event, birds can be, but at the university there the seagulls are flying around, all kinds of other birds. And really, I must say, I am an amateur architect, and I always had my doubts about modern architecture. The way they have that place built, it's magnificent. It's magnificent. It's the seventh wonder of the world. Or the actual new Alexandria, which was also had the seventh wonder of the world. Now I know that years ago I have proclaimed that Los Angeles is the new Alexandria. Well, why can't there be two incarnations of old Alexandria? Why not? So we're not giving up on Los Angeles, but I must include certainly the University of Brian Campbell of British Columbia. That's how I remember it. So anyway, it's a fabulous place. And I'm sure that it's colder and snowier and things. I have been in Vancouver, but not at the university twice before. And it can get icy and slushy beyond all belief. But even in the wintertime, it can be quite nice. Now then, back to what's supposed to be the subject. So, many of you have heard a little bit of this before at other times, so I will make it very short. Within the last, 30, 40 years, maybe even less, there occurred certain discoveries of an archivist nature. Primarily the discoveries were in the archives of the international headquarters of the society in Adyar in India, and others. And these in turn were turned over by a very generous lady who was the international president at that time by Radha Bernier, who herself was the daughter of an international president of NSHRI. But anyway, they were turned over to him for research, to Michael Gomes. So Michael Gomes found unpublished and untouched publications, big ones, some of them, of H.P. Blavatsky in the archives in Adyar. And he went and showed them to the president. Rather, look, these are by H.P.B. herself. These were never published that I know of. And we have to do something with these. And the dear Hindu lady agreed. Oh yes, she's the founder. She wrote some unusual things. If she put these things aside, they must be particularly interesting. And they are. So, what emerges from that literature? One great big thick book and one much smaller. That prior to her death, I mean, she couldn't have done it after her death, or if she did, we wouldn't know about it, But just prior to it, she died, I think, a year before the turn of the century in England. Just prior to her passing, she indicated over and over again in various ways that she still had something to do. And to begin the work on this additional material, she wrote these 2 books. One of them masqueraded as a secret doctrine commentary, which it really is not, but it is primarily, she organized a class in London in which there were people who were really interested in this stuff. Right? I know and you know that it's not much fun to be preaching to a choir, especially if the choir is not terribly intelligent. You know? I've done it, and it's sad. But in any event, that's a big thick book or something, secret doctrine, we have it. And what happened there was that she would read and review passages from her secret doctrine, and then other people would comment on it and ask questions about it and things of that description. And that is still around. But she was rather dissatisfied with it, and I don't blame her, because those Victorian English asked the stupidest questions that anybody could think about. And so after, I don't know, more than a year of the class, and there were stenographers there, believe it or not, who wrote everything down, the answers and the questions, and the questions and the answers. And she gave up. She said, no, this is not really working, we've got to do something else. And that is when she wrote the book that I have recommended for the book club here, and that they are still studying, which is I think the title is The Secret Teachings of H.P. Blavatsky or something of that sort. All of these were read, edited over and over again by our great historian Michael Gomes. That is, by the way, that's a Portuguese name, and you know in Spanish it's Gomez. In Portuguese it's Gomes. So now you learn the great difference between the 2 Latin languages, and you should be deliriously happy. You know. But in any event, and that indicates a little more of the direction that she was going to. Now, I have conducted a special class about it here once, and I have introduced it into the book club, so I shouldn't beat the dead dog. Oh my goodness, the dead dog. You should have smelled this place when we came in here that Sunday morning. It was absolutely awful. Well, Dr. Abt said, Stephan, there's something wrong here. He says, you better believe it. There's something dead around. So he went down under the building. You know, you can go under the building very nicely as long as you remain under the stage, because there is room there. But once you get here, you have to crawl. So he crawled until he found the dead dog. And so he was yelling back to me, there is something here, there's a dead dog here, this, that, and the other thing. So then after a while I said to him, Bill, are you okay over there? Are you going to be okay? Because this was a Saturday evening, and you know, being 21 years old, I had more pleasant things to attend to on a Saturday evening than look at dead dogs underneath the lodge building. As you may imagine, that doesn't need very big imagination. In any event, he remained here, and I went away. And I said, geez, I left that poor man under the building with the dead dog, but I had better things to do, so I went ahead. But next day he was here, I was here, and he said what he did that night. he contacted, this was a very energetic man. He went and contacted the city sanitation departments. He said, we have to have this canine cadaver out of here by tomorrow. We have to. Oh, no, sir. Oh, yes, you are going to. I know I don't know what, the assistant mayor, and he's not going to like it if you don't cooperate with me. So he did it. They came in the middle of the night, picked up the dead dog and took it away. And then we were still here spreading, I don't know, Channel 25 or whatever around there. And then we had a really very nice meeting. So the dead dog did not remain here. But let's say now, jumping back to Blavatsky's writings, when these previously unpublished books, as well as some articles on alchemy, which were republished by the Quest magazine just very recently. Very interesting articles, but they do require your attention because they contain letters to two of her relatives, both of them Russian princes, Prince Alexander Dondukov-Korsakov, who was one of the last really good statesmen of Tsar Nicholas, and another one was just her great-grandfather, a letter to her great-great-grandfather, the old Prince Dolgoruki. So you see, she wasn't exactly a proletarian of Lenin. All her relatives were princes. In any event, you know, Russia had an entirely different nobilary system than, say, England. You know, it's all of them have their nobility, but it's very differently constituted because the upper classes of Russia were composed of a particular people, and they were the Varangians. They came to Russia not so terribly long ago, maybe around the year 1000 or a little bit before, and they then took all the land. The poor Slavs who were remaining there, they were tilling the land and eating off of it or so, but the Russian nobility were all the Varangian nobles. They were something vaguely related to the Vikings. They were Scandinavian-like people. And they were then, when the Tsars came in to Moscow, then they were all made imperial princes. So there were, I think, 120 or something like that, princely families in Russia. And then other minor nobility that the Tsars created. But Madame Blavatsky's mother's family, the Dolgorukis, were one of the most illustrious of them all, because they were originally and for centuries the ruling princes of what you now call Ukraine, or then was called Little Rus. The Grand Princes of Kiev, and their early Grand Prince was the first one who invited the missionaries from Constantinople, from the Greek Orthodox Church, to come and convert the Russians. And that is how the Russian Orthodox Church came to be formed. But the Russian Orthodox Church was first based in Kiev, which, by the way, is not pronounced Kiev, which sounds to me like something of a culinary distinction. Oh, I had such a nice dish of Kiev. You know. But in any event, then Kiev came to bad days. Why? Because of a very unpleasant people who are called the Mongols. I tell you, if you want to find some unpleasant people on the face of the world, they are it. And they were it. They devastated Hungary too. In 30 days' time, they killed off about 70% of the population. They rode through every village, killed every man, woman, and child, killed the dogs, killed the horses, and got back on their own little horses, and yoo-hoo, they rode off to kill the next town. Really difficult people to do business with, I would say. In any event, so Kiev declined, because every year these nasty characters would arrive on their little horses. Hey, here, do it again. Kill everybody, rob everybody, rape the women, and then say, yoo-hoo, and ride away again. They came down from what would now be the Crimea, southern Russia, and from there. In any event, and that's when another town that hardly anybody heard about before, and it was way north of there, called Moscow started growing, because the little Rus couldn't do that. That was called the big Rus. And in the big Rus, then one of the boyars who was actually the son of a patriarch. I'm sure you're not interested in that. Anyway, became the Tsar, which they took the title and various other things from Constantinople. Because Constantinople was going downhill. The Turks were coming and everything. And so the Russian Tsars fancied themselves, not even all that erroneously, to be the successors of the Byzantine emperors. And they remained as that. Tsar is just a Russianization of what word? What do you think? Caesar, the same as Kaiser in German, or Emperor in other things. And so the Tsars were in Moscow, the princes of Kiev were still in Kiev, and they became more easily absorbed into the Russian Empire, and one of their lady members married a Cossack officer by the name of Han. Paul Peter Rottenstern Han, who was a Cossack officer and who ended a general under the Tsar, who was the father of H.P. Blavatsky. Because Blavatsky was her married name. When she married an elderly government official down in the south of Russia, and well, as was to be expected, didn't work out all that well. But she retained the name Blavatsky. She never, as far as we know, never officially divorced Blavatsky. And so she was Madame Blavatsky till the end of her days. When she was here in America, she tried for a while, and she had somebody, I don't know whether Russian or not, somebody that she was going to marry, but that didn't work out either, so she remained Madame Blavatsky. In any event, I may also wish to bring to your attention once again, even though you will accuse me more and more of hubris, that a first cousin of mine at the present time, just a few years ago, in Austria. She was in Canada first and went back to Austria, married a member of the family of Rothenstern-Hahn. And when I asked her, there was a great nephew of hers living here, Mr. Boris de Zirkov, a wonderful man. I liked him really greatly. And so he was lecturing here one time. And I said, Mr. de Zirkov, look, my girl cousin just married somebody of the Hahn family. Is that? He says, there is only one Hahn family. You are now our relative. And as far as I know, my cousin is only about 3 years older than I, so she can very well be still alive. And Boris de Zirkov is also the one who informed us in writing that all the books that say that she was the daughter of Colonel Peter Paul Hahn is wrong, because at the time of his death and a few years before his death, her father was promoted general. So she was the general's daughter, not the colonel's daughter. And to be a general in the Tsar's army was no joke. That was a big job. In any event, she has since then written, or let's say her writings, her letters were found that upon her and prior to her departure from Russia as a very young girl, she was already interested in the occult. And that, among other things, one of the letters was found, it's in the Quest magazine, where she indicated that she was herself practicing some kind of alchemy. And she thanked her great-grandfather, Prince Dolgoruki, for having had that wonderful alchemical library of which she availed herself so much, and that's how she learned alchemy. In any event, the alchemical stuff is all written in a kind of code. You don't have anything alchemical that's straightforward. But apparently she practiced some kind of an alchemy which had to do with a lot of other alchemists, had to do with her own transformation. That's what alchemy is all about. If you think it's the transformation of a piece of lead into gold, well, I would say maybe you're barking up the wrong tree of life. Because that's not what it is all about. In any event, it's indicated, I deduce, but of course my deductions are just mine. I deduce that she went through an internal alchemical process, and that at the end of it, which is when she was writing this letter to great-grandfather, she had accomplished the union of, as she called it in the letter, the black and the white. Now that is really the final stage of a certain alchemical nomenclature. So she did, and undoubtedly that in turn introduced her to these various deeper aspects of philosophy, and eventually motivated her to write Secret Doctrine and similar works. So what we really have here is she intended to produce a system that would start with these simple things: physical body, etheric body, astral body, lower mental body, higher mental body, whatever she called them. All the different alchemical processes. In other words, these were the alchemical stages which she did not mention at that time, except in some private letters that they were alchemy, but they were alchemy. And what happens? So what happens then? You have all of these colors: the black, the white, the green, and so. And then finally, you have the rainbow of many colors, all the different colors, the albedo, the rubedo, all of them are there, and then those are in turn boiled down to two, and those two are the white and the black. So that is the last stage of that particular alchemical work. So the indication is that already as a very young girl, probably not much more than 15, 16 years old, she was an accomplished alchemist. And from that I feel that a lot of the other things grew forth. By the way, if any of you are, and probably some of you are familiar with Jung's collected writings. In the collected writings there is one volume, I think it's probably volume 6, which is entitled The Psychology of the Transference. Doesn't sound very alchemical, but it is. And in it there are 10 pictures of the rosary of the philosophers, Rosarum Philosophorum, the 10 transformational stages of the alchemy. And at the end, after this, they start as the two, the black and the white, and they're undergoing all kinds of things. They even die at a particular point and then come forth again. But eventually, they become one. And now here you have this amazing creature with a two-headed eagle, which is incidentally also the imperial emblem of the Russia of the Tsars and of Austria. I have a hidden away in my bedroom. I have a big, wonderful cloth, which contains the coats of arms of all the parts of the Austrian Empire, Austria and Hungary and Transylvania and Istria, one after the other. Really nice. Was sent to me by somebody in England who now refuses to correspond with me. I think I did not thank with him vociferously enough. But in any event, that is so. Now the two are one. And that two in one is the carrier of the Philosopher's Stone. That's the final stage of the alchemical transformation. And she apparently had done it already according to her letter. So she was a doggone good alchemist as a young girl. There should be more like that. In any event, we could have our own alchemical section, you see, with all the alchemists. In any event, owing to her contacts, her travels, all of that, she sort of indicated and implied that her teachings had a lot to do with India. And so, I think 1 year after the foundation of the Theosophical Society, she and her co-worker, Colonel Olcott, took the boat to India. And that is when they bought the estate in Adyar, and when the whole kind of Indian shift of the Theosophical Society occurred. But I think it's important to remember that her mind was a universal mind. Her mind was not Indian, but she did learn a lot of Indian things too. For a while they were associated with an Indian society called the Arya Samaj, which was something like the Vedanta society at the present time. But then they kind of got tired of each other. I mean, Blavatsky and Olcott on one side, and Swami Dayanand Saraswati the other, and they separated their organizations. But from then on, there was always a strong Indian element, which grew even stronger at the time of Annie Besant, who became a political leader in addition to everything else, and the early teacher of Mahatma Gandhi and things like that. So that never caused any trouble in the Theosophical Society. In fact, when was that? About a year ago, I think, there was one of the international conventions, which is different from what we went to. This was a world convention. But the convention to which all members were always invited in Adyar is around Christmas time. It's in the middle of winter, because then the weather is nice in India. You know? So there was, let's say, it emerged, and it was there came a high official, I think, under minister, under secretary to it, and the secretary said that it is the opinion of most of the influential statesmen in India that Annie Besant was a better statesman than Gandhi. Now, he said it, I don't know anything about it, but Gandhi was discovered in South Africa reading a book that was published by the Theosophical Society, and that was Annie Besant's translation of the Bhagavad Gita. The first time he read the Bhagavad Gita was in a Theosophical book. Now, again, this is not to put down Gandhi or others, but they played, beginning with Olcott and Besant, they played a very important role. Yeah, in the recovery and eventually the independence of India. Now, or if you go to Fairfax Avenue, then oy vey. Yeah. In any event, to really conclude on that one, let's say we felt, I and Michael Gomez, so forth, that the time for a new phase in the teaching and mystical mission of the Theosophical Society is arriving, and that we have been a little bit remiss, and there has just really been too much, I did not use that term, but I think they understood, regurgitating of the secret doctrine and things of that sort. How long can you go with those things? You know? It's interesting, it's beautiful, it's a great myth, somewhat like the Grail myth or something of that sort, but there must be something beyond, and there is. And that is what she indicated with her alchemy and other things, that there is a way into what sometime in the Theosophical Society was called the higher self. It's the personality, and then above it is the higher self. And the higher self touches the transcendental. It's sort of like what Jung called the transcendent function. And that was her objective, that now we've got the cosmology, we got the reincarnation, we got all of these lower things in order. So now we need to penetrate into the realm of transcendence. It can be done, it has been done, and if there are enough people who are willing to do it now, it shall be done. And with that, I'll conclude this evening's with ranting, because I think that in a different way, expressed differently, this was very much the content of my talk, the concluding talk of the conference, and I got a standing ovation of many hundreds of people, and I haven't had any, at least any openly voiced disagreements, and hopefully I won't, because I think that we're moving in the right direction, and if we can do that, and we start some of it with H.P. Blavatsky's alchemy, and so that doesn't mean, listen, The Secret Doctrine is a fabulous book. I spent so many hours lying in bed, reading one volume after the other, in my first little apartment in Hollywood, which was on Whitley Avenue, and I enjoyed it immensely. So then I said, well, what does this do for you? It does for me something to make me accustomed to the world image, to what the Germans call Weltanschauung, or what's his name, Max Heindel calls the cosmoconception. And once you have that cosmoconception, then from there you can climb the ladder further. So it was to introduce people to that task, and why it may be important, and so that I gave that talk. It was very nicely received. Whether anything is going to happen with the project, I don't know, but I did it nevertheless, and I was happy to do it. So that's it.